Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk for a little bit about Jalen Green and the Houston Rockets. The Rockets, ever since they traded away James Harden, have either been the worst team in the Western Conference or tied for the worst team. It's been a pretty rough rebuilding period for them coming into this year, but this was the chance for them to go ahead and make a statement. There are a lot of reasons to expect that this year would be the best Rockets season in quite some time. It started off with the changing of the head coach. They had Stephen Silas over the past few years, who, by the time he was fired, was considered by most people to be the worst coach in the NBA. And they went from him to Ime Udoka, who made the finals in his sole year as Boston Celtics head coach. So he had that experience. He gave the Celtics this high-level defensive mentality, and that was stuff that it seemed like he could bring over to Houston. Plus, they went ahead and made some splashes in the free agent market, specifically adding Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks would add on to that defensive, gritty mentality that Ime Udoka was probably going to try and instill in them, and Fred VanVleet gave them a playmaker and a shot creator at the guard position, something that they really needed. And then, of course, it felt like there was going to be some development from the young guys, whether it was just natural progression over the course of their careers or stuff that was boosted because now they've actually got a competent head coach and more talent around them. Guys were expected to blossom. Players like Jabari Smith Jr. going into his sophomore year, Alperen Sengun building off last year where he showed a lot of flashes, but maybe most of all, the guy that I was personally the most excited for was Jalen Green. The Rockets took Green second overall back in the 2021 draft, and he was the first real cornerstone pick of this Houston rebuild. He was a guy that they looked at to be the successor to James Harden. They just trade away a shooting guard with unbelievable scoring prowess, and we're bringing another guy in. Before he had even played a single summer league game, there are a lot of people scouting him that said they viewed him as a future scoring champion, maybe not just once, but multiple times. He had that type of hype before he even played a single game in the summer league. This led into a really fun rookie season from him. He showcased his unbelievable athleticism, dunking on guys and finishing through contact because he could just levitate, it seemed like. He had some really solid shot making and shot creation moments. Just showcased a world of potential between the athleticism and the just natural feel for scoring the basketball. It felt like Jalen Green was going to be a special player in this league. And last year, he built off of that, averaging 22 points per game in just his second season on pretty similar efficiency. It felt like he was undergoing some good progression. It didn't lead to a lot of wins because the Rockets were a mess for the most part, but you could see that Jalen Green was growing. He was getting better. There was a bunch of inconsistency, which is expected for a young scorer, but those flashes were very, very special. He, in just his first two seasons, had some of the craziest flashes out of any young player at that point. And with a drastically improved situation around him going into his third season, it seemed like he was poised for a massive breakout this year. He was going to have Ime Udoka there, who could actually put him in positions to succeed, a better playmaker alongside him and Fred VanVleet, who could set him up better, take some of the pressure off him, because a lot of the times teams were just sending a ton of guys, some of their best defenders at Jalen Green, but now you've also got to worry about Fred VanVleet, Alperen Sengun's getting better, Jabari Smith Jr., Dillon Brooks would also be a threat out there as well, so there are more players to take some of the pressure off him. He could play a bit more free. It felt like this could be a big year for Jalen Green. I saw a lot of people, specifically Rockets fans, saying that they could see him averaging 25 plus points per game, and I wasn't quite that high, but I did think a 23-24 point per game season was not out of the question. But even if the numbers didn't jump significantly in the point per game department, because with more guys around him there were going to be more mouths to feed, I was expecting a jump in efficiency. I thought this was going to be a big building block year for Jalen Green. It may not be like the breakout into all-stardom, but it could be a year where he would definitely establish himself as a future all-star in some way. Unfortunately, for the most part this season, he's been a massive disappointment. Rather than becoming the cornerstone that people saw him as, he fell in points per game, field goal percentage, three-point percentage. The defense was really rough, especially in contrast to what the rest of the team is doing, because they've been a great defensive squad all year. Jalen Green has pretty clearly been the weak link on that end. And not to mention the really rough shot selection. He's never had great shot selection, which is understandable for a young player, especially when they're in positions like they were the past couple of years where they're not really competing for anything. But this year, when they're trying to make a play and push, they're trying to be a more competitive team, it feels like he's taking some of the craziest shots that he ever has, just driving into a bunch of defenders in front of him, trying to take on 3-4 guys on a fast break, taking shots off balance, fading out of bounds when he probably doesn't need to do that. He should just be more selective, and that would probably lead to at least some type of jump in efficiency, but instead, he just continues to kind of chuck out there. I saw a lot of Rockets fans recently saying that he should be taken out of the starting lineup leading up to the deadline. There were some people saying maybe they should consider trading him, especially if they're in pursuit of a star, which it was rumored they were. So there was a lot of buzz surrounding Jalen Green, and it wasn't for the best reason. I even made a video earlier on this year where I think I called it the Houston Rockets have a Jalen Green problem, and basically detailed the fact that to be the best version of themselves, the Rockets need Jalen Green playing at a high level. He was picked as a cornerstone for a reason. They need him to play like it if they want to compete anytime soon. I wasn't giving up on him. He's still really young, just turned 22, I think like a month and a half ago. But I did, over the course of the season, start to hop off the bandwagon just a little bit. However, Jalen Green has this tendency every year to really pop off after the All-Star game. He's done it in both of his first 2 seasons, and this year, he's doing it again. But he's been better than ever. In fact, he's currently in the midst of the best stretch of his entire career. Over the last 11 games, Jalen Green is averaging 27.2 points per game, 5.8 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.1 steals, while shooting 48% from the field, 40% from 3, and 81% from the free throw line. This stretch includes back-to-back 34-point games versus the Suns, one of which was a win, a 27-3-5-2 game against Portland in a blowout W, 37 in a blowout win over Washington, 26-11-4-1-2 in a blowout win over Cleveland, 42-10-3-1-1 in another blowout win over Washington, and I believe that 42 did tie his career high. Also, hitting 7 threes in that game, which is the second time over this 11-game stretch that he's done that. And then last night, had 26 points, 4 rebounds, 3 dimes, a steal, and a block, and a win over the Bulls, which just so happened to be the 7th straight win for the Houston Rockets, which currently makes for the longest streak in the entire NBA. Between the statistical dominance and the team winning, Jalen Green actually just earned himself his first career Player of the Week in the Western Conference, joining James Harden and Alperen Sengun as the only guys to do so since 2019. Over this stretch, he's been much more consistent from the outside, really knocking down a lot of those looks, and like I mentioned, having these crazy performances where he'll knock down 7, 6 threes. That's a huge improvement in his game. He really needs to build up on that outside shot to give himself more space to utilize his elite athleticism to get downhill, attack the basket, which he's been doing really well as of late. I feel like he's been taking better shots. Does still have some moments where he's taking absurd ones, but over this stretch, at the very least, he's making a lot of those, so maybe it's gonna work eventually. But he's been better in that regard, isn't taking as many insane shots. He's creating space really well, utilizing his quickness and his handle to get to positions to go ahead and knock down looks. I feel like he's setting up his teammates well, been better on the defensive end. I liked his rebounding a lot, using that athleticism to crash the boards. It's all stuff that we've seen flashes of from Jalen Green. It's just been rare that he's put it all together consistently, but over these last 11 games, he's doing exactly that, and he looks like an unbelievable player when he puts it all together. Like, over this stretch, you can see why people, just from watching his G League Ignite games, thought he could be a future scoring champ. The physical tools are otherworldly, the athleticism is there. When he's knocking down shots, it looks like he's got one of the most unstoppable offensive games on the planet. He's just cooking at the moment, and the team looks so good when he's playing like this because they really do lack a lot of scoring. The team has been great defensively all year, but the offense has been a major struggle for them. When Jalen Green is giving them this high-level production, the offense looks passable, and that combined with the 6th best defense in the league over these 11 games is causing this wave of success that they're having at the moment. As I alluded to earlier, this is what I was talking about in my Jalen Green video earlier. If the Rockets want to get back to being a winning franchise, Jalen Green is a very important cog to that. They picked him 2nd overall. They've got a hit on that pick. He has to be productive in some way, find some type of consistency, and if he does, it completely changes the trajectory of this team. They go from a squad where you're kind of thinking about, okay, how do they get to the next level, to probably at the next level very quickly if Jalen Green reaches what it seems like his potential is. Not to mention that a lot of this success has been without Alperen Sengun, who is kind of their consensus best player at this point. They lost him just 2 games into the win streak. He's been their offensive hub, really just keeps the offensive end afloat for them pretty much at all times. It felt like they were going to collapse without him, but Jalen Green has kept the team on course, and in fact has gotten them more wins than they've gotten at any point in this entire season. With these wins, they've actually put themselves dangerously close to the Warriors and Lakers in the 9 and 10 spots. They're just 2.5 games back of the Golden State Warriors in the standings at this point, 3 games back of LA, and just 1 game under 500. The Rockets are rapidly turning the year around. It felt like the 10 teams for the play-in and playoffs were set, that nobody was going to catch them, but the Rockets are trying to make it interesting at the last moment, and Jalen Green is trying to propel them ever closer to a play-in spot. Now, unfortunately for the the Rockets, they do have one of the hardest schedules left. They have to face the Thunder, Wolves, Magic, Clippers, Heat, and Mavericks twice over the remaining 13 games, which is really difficult. Not to mention the Warriors and Lakers have some of the easier schedules, so catching those teams is going to be really hard. But, I mean, hey, the Rockets have been destroying good teams recently, and Jalen Green is on one right now, so anything's possible. Regardless or not if they make it, though, the Rockets should be really proud of the steps they've taken this season. I think this has been a wildly successful year, especially with this jump that we've seen from Jalen Green. I really hope that this is the beginning of him finding some type of consistency and building momentum going into next year. I mentioned this in my Alperen Sengun video recently. I still don't know if the Rockets have like that guy, the guy that can lead this franchise back to championship contention. Sengun feels like the most probable candidate for that. I really like Amin Thompson's game. I don't know if Jabari Smith Jr. and Cam Whitmore are going to be those guys. They feel a bit more complimentary, but Jalen Green has always been the wild card in that equation because of the flashes he's shown. It's just a matter of if he can actually put it together. Hopefully this is the beginning of just that. We see this Jalen Green the rest of the year, and going into next season, I do think some more continuity will do Jalen Green good. Maybe that's the reason he turns it up by the time the All-Star break comes around, is because he's gotten used to his situation, his teammates. Like the past couple of years, Jalen Green has had to deal with a bunch of player movement, a bad head coach. Maybe going into next season, he'll finally have a way to maintain this level of play that we're seeing from him. Keeping my fingers crossed. I really like his game. I'm rooting for him. And it's just great to see the Jalen Green that we've been waiting for. With all that being said, I appreciate you watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Comment down below. Do you still believe in Jalen Green? How far do you think he can take this Rockets team? Do you think he can bring them to the play-in, or are they going to fall just short? And what do you see him becoming over the course of his career? Do you think he'll just be this microwave spark plug scorer? Could you see him being an all-star, all-NBA player eventually? Do you think he could turn himself into the franchise guy for the Rockets? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments, but for right now, like I said, appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.